As a start, I want to show a result from a survey which we have been doing at year-end 22. And so it's still rather fresh. What we have been asking is one question, that is, what are the short-term and mid-term challenges which different industries would face? And the response was rather surprising in a way that this topic of competence ranks highest. And you see the distance is also quite high. It's almost a 20 percentage point. People could give 3 priorities, so that is why the sum of all these dots is more than 100%. Now, with this risk of insufficient competence, we have several impacts. One is that we have direct impact on innovation. I mean, not enough people means we will also scale down on innovation, but also unable to manage complexity, unable to do what is necessary for quality, and that in the end will have impact on cost, which means, for instance, you have rework. In other words, we see a direct relationship in competence on quality, and that means on the other side, and this is why I showed that chart, that we need in testing additional competence, not in terms of number of people, because that we don't get, but in terms of how can we more intelligently test. And that's getting more and more relevant now because testing is currently changing very much. Some people argue, especially students that I know from university, that testing is boring. And I never saw it that way, but it could be because, I mean, as a student, you would like to develop code, and running code, of course, seems to be fascinating. Now, getting a product into industry scale needs verification and validation. And we are currently in a situation where we do on the code level, with unit tests, a lot of activities. We do some activities with respect to validation and integration and system level. But what we see with many clients, test strategy is mostly poor. That means not enough traceability, not enough clear perspective of how much regression test is necessary, and what is most dangerous, blind spots. And a blind spot, especially when it comes to cybersecurity, can be extremely dangerous, because if you haven't verified or validated a certain port or code segment or service, can be very sure that this will be sooner or later an entry for attacks. In other words, testing matters, and intelligent testing is the call of the day, because we lack the competence in terms of people. And so we have to improve the quality of our testing. I will in this webinar show some strategies, and especially 3 powerful methods from different abstraction levels, covering code analysis, moving onwards into fuzzing, that is a kind of a brute force test method, and gray box penetration tests. So 3 very different security verification and validation methods, which help to grow intelligent testing and therefore also beef up your own testing activities. Now, the motivation behind all that is product liability. That is, as a producer, we are held accountable for the quality of the product which we get into the market. The yardstick is very simple. Any released standard, any applicable standard, this is considered best practice. This is what is expected if you bring the product to the market. And that means also that we look very much into the different standards with respect to security, with respect to testing. And what you can see here on the left side is a lot of weakness which we currently have. Attacks are increasingly remote, but at the same time, we see about 1/3 of the company have no established product cybersecurity program. 2/3 test not even half of the hardware and software. This is also an observation which we have. I mean, these numbers come from big surveys. You see the sources here below. But we see with our own customers that we have really this kind of imbalance of testing done where it's easy, where it's perceived easy, and at the same time not done where there's a lack of strategy. About half of the code have high vulnerabilities with static analysis. So this is obviously one topic which I will also cover in these 3 methods. And what we see on the right side is the industrial Internet of Things. Critical cybersecurity attacks, this grows exponentially and certainly will further on grow because we have more service orientation, we have more connectivity, and that means exposure is continuously growing. It's a major risk across industries. This is also why we thought to bring this experiences to this webinar series, because it's a technology demanding topic in terms of test and also in terms of cybersecurity, but at the same time it's also a high liability risk, which matters to all of us. Now, connectivity and also what we call ACEs, that is the evolution with respect to an increasing amount of automation of the convergence of enterprise and product IT, of ecology and of services. This is what these 4 letters of ACEs are about, means that the doors open for a wide range of attacks. That means independent what we face is with more standardization in terms of languages, in terms of APIs, in terms of service orientation. Standard tools for hacking will also be easier to use and are available. And that means there's a kind of a boost effect. With more connectivity, you will also have more security attacks. And that means from a very practical perspective today, cybersecurity is more interesting than drug trafficking. Now you can argue this is a good news because then drug trafficking might go down. I'm afraid that both are considered as very viable and sustainable sources of income. So we have to be alert on both of these topics. Now let's look into practical aspects of what ACEs means from a cybersecurity perspective. I take here a mobility example. We could take easily other example. Later on, I come with a case study for medical. So to balance the examples which we talk here in this webinar. In this picture, what we can see is different type of attack schemes. We have physical attacks. I mean, you could attack the system itself. You can also have remote attacks. That is possible with any sort of connectivity between a product, between a software system and the outside. These are growing. We see today an evolution which very fast moves into that a vast majority, 90+% is done remotely. Only few would be direct physical attacks. This is typically this so-called proof of concept, this so-called approach to show that systems can be hacked, but a big amount of the vulnerabilities comes today from either phishing and or social engineering. And I say and or because in a way it's the same. Phishing is one type of social engineering, and we have to be alert that, as we say, the enemy is in our own bed. That means the scope of these attacks from inside the company, be it, let's say, inadvertently, which is the vast majority, or be it even by desire to, for instance, hurt your employee, that would grow, and this is growing very fast. And that means we will have, independent which industry and independent how this picture looks like, growing amount of these attacks from the outside. It means also from a product liability perspective, and that is often underestimated, cybersecurity has gained now the position of the key risk. If we go backwards 10, 15, 20 years, there were other risks with respect to product liability. But today it's cybersecurity for the simple reason that once a potential vulnerability is known in a highly distributed system, which is the Internet of Things, which is any sort of mobility service, any sort of other service,